Welcome back to the Force with Friends podcast. We've both watched episode 14 of season 3 of The Bad Batch. I think we got some stuff to talk about. Mainly, we're going to be seeing what do we think is going to happen in the finale next week. I think after today, I haven't watched everybody's predictions or not the predictions, but the reactions yet and how they're breaking it down. But I think today may have thrown a little wrench in everybody's plan. So we're recording this on Wednesday. So when we say today, it was Wednesday. You're watching it on Friday. But I don't think today went the way a lot of people thought it was going to go.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely in that camp. I mean, it was a good episode. It was interesting, like the story moved along, but man, to have one episode left, it didn't feel like it got us quite into the heavy enough. Like I feel like there needed to be more tension, more like danger. Like I feel like all of that stuff is absent right now. I feel like everybody's pretty squared away, which is just not what I was expecting going into the final episode. And so I don't know, man. I mean, we've been talking about it. Everybody thinks, you and I were just saying, everybody thinks they're going to die, but it doesn't feel that way right now. It's weird. So I don't know what to expect.
Yeah. Well, and so let's talk about this week's episode first. We'll start there, and then we'll kind of get into the ramifications of it. So obviously, episode 13 ends with them attaching the ship up under the science shuttle. I mean, isn't that so great? They call it the scientific shuttle or something like that. Like, it's vague but nerdy. And so they're on that, get to Tantus. At the same time, Omega in the last episode was working her way out through the inside the walls. This week essentially furthers her working in the walls. Like, she finds her way out with the Zillow Beast. Thanks for everyone in the comments on my reaction for letting me know that was a Zillow Beast. I miss things like that all the time, so I really do appreciate those comments because I miss that. So got a Zillow Beast there. She's confident. She knows the Bad Batch is there, and she knows she can get out. Like, she's pretty good at this, and she's going to take those kids with her. On the other hand, most of the Bad Batch is in the woods, and the big monster animal kind of bought them some time. And Echo's inside, which is appropriate because Echo hadn't been with him but for like 2.5 minutes this whole season. So why not just keep him away even more? But he's on the inside, and it does make sense that he's the one doing all that type of stuff. And then he's going to be with Emery. So Emery is finally turning, which we thought would happen.
Yeah.
And that's the episode. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I was expecting, not that I was thinking like, oh, whatever. I thought there would be some weight to this episode. And was there anything weighty that happened other than Emery being like, yeah, I'm going to help?
I don't think so. I mean, we talk about it in a minute. There's that exchange between Rampart and Crosshair that seems like it'll still points to some things with Crosshair that may happen later, but not really. I mean, honestly, I feel like it was a little bit of a letdown because coming in from the last episode, that like super intense moment where they're trying to attach the shuttle right before it jumps into hyperspace, like that was really intense, and you're like, oh my man, and then we go into this, and I feel like it just kind of I don't feel like that intensity was kept up. I don't feel like it continued to drive that same level of tension. And so it just feels weird going into the last episode, feeling like everybody's just kind of doing their thing. Everybody's okay. Not a lot of danger right now. I don't know. It was interesting and it was good, but at the same time, it just feels weird. So
yeah, I won't say it's a disappointment more so than, but I guess it would be the definition of disappointment. Like, I had these hopes and those hopes weren't there, but I'm not upset with the episode. But I just thought there was going to maybe be a bigger setup. Like last week, like you said, so much tension at the very end. Like, you could feel it kind of leaning on the edge of your seat. This week, I did feel that to an extent, but only when Omega was getting back to her cell. Like climbing back down, and they were stalling for her very poorly, like not good at all. So there was that, but at the same time, the most emotion I felt in this episode of this animated series, which is funny, we're talking about like emotion in that, like it but when Crosshair did say like, Omega didn't leave me, and so I'm coming back. That was a good line. And then at the end, you're kind of like, oh, okay, she knows, because she just leans forward on the table, like, I know how we're getting out of here. And so that's kind of like, okay, she's got this figured out. And I did like that because, again, you want to keep the focus on her. She's the main character of this. But the rumors are there's 25-minute episode next week. And what does 25 actually mean? 21? 20?
Yeah.
Because of credits.
I mean, it's not a lot of time. and we were just saying, like, it feels like at this point in the show, they have an I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Like,
oh, for sure.
Because to be honest, I kind of felt this way going into the last episode of Ahsoka. I was just like, man, they got a lot to do. They got a lot to wrap up in one episode. And I was pleased with how that ended, right? Like I appreciated the ending of Ahsoka. And so I'm hoping, but it feels like they're going to have to leave off some stuff because, I mean, 21 minutes is so short, right? And so
if that's true, if it's 25 with credits, that's not a lot of time.
And so I just do wonder if some of these other story elements that we've been expecting or hoping for within this finale might just kind of get kicked down the road a little bit. And this might really just be the Bad Batch, like just this core group.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can look at we've made a few predictions. So our initial prediction episode, we had like some ones we thought we were realistic. We intentionally had some outlandish ones like, oh, this might not happen, but you want it to happen type thing. But I think our realistic ones, like I wanted selfishly, like I was thinking it might have been setting up for Vader to show up. Now, since then, we've talked through that a lot, and looking at the canon, it would make sense for Vader not to show up. I'm fine with that because it fits in with everything else. But I also don't think that the entire like hierarchy of the Empire should have just went away either after the third episode. I mean, that's essentially what happens. Palpatine was in the third one. That was it. The rest of the time, it's been the Doctor, Hemlock. Then, you were thinking there was going to be like some big clone ramifications. Like we need some closure on that clone story that they actually have been setting up since season 2, right? Like that was a big setup in season 2.
It's been a pretty big part of this the Bad Batch show, right? Like, it's been a big portion of Rex's arc as he's appeared throughout this, and it doesn't feel like there's really going to be any part of that within this finale.
Well, especially like mid season for this, like what 6 or 7 maybe, where there was that episode
with Rex and Wolf,
you get that Rex and Wolf, and so almost as if that wasn't even in this season now. Like it just feels kind of disjointed.
Well, now I don't want them to, right? Because I don't want to figure out a way to like build up this monumental like clone event to where they rebel or there's some sort of battle or something large scale, because it's going to be rushed. You're going to have to figure it, like an episode isn't enough to do all the things that I feel like I want to hear from that story now. So I feel like at this point I'd rather them leave it out and tell it some other time. But it was something that I was kind of expecting as a part of this arc.
So think this, okay? The episode title for episode 15, the finale, I'm pretty sure is called The Cavalry Has Arrived, right? That's what it is. So some cavalry's arriving. Now it could go one of two ways. It could be, I think the most likely meaning now is it would be, Rampart and Hunter. Well, Rampart's separate from them now. So Hunter and Crosshair and Wrecker making it to Omega Echo Imri. Like they're in trouble and maybe they arrive. That kind of seems most likely at this moment. But at the same time, there's still the possibility that it's Rex and all those clones that we've seen. Now, like you said, given that they've just completely dropped that over the last however so many weeks, it would almost seem kind of cheap just to throw them right back in at the end with no development. you might want that to happen in a different avenue, maybe like a spin-off show or something. But obviously the title is going to mean something. So I think it will be one of those two things. I guess this is a prediction. Either the Cavalry is going to be Hunter and his crew, the Bad Batch, getting Omega, Echo, and Emery out of there, or it will be Rex showing up with more clones. One of the two.
Which I do see as pretty plausible, because after they land, Echo goes back and plugs back into the ship and does something.
He did. You're right.
I'm wondering if maybe he's like broadcasting a location or some sort of message.
That's so good.
Because one of the things was like, well, how are Rex and everybody else going to figure out where Tantus is? That little portion there at least opens up a possibility for how they would find out.
I overlooked that 100%.
So I think maybe that's what he was doing, was sending out a message. So I can see them rolling up and kind of saving the day, but again, not in any sort of really big way that's going to have ramifications for all of the clones altogether. So I don't know.
I think maybe you're right. So because he was with Rex most of this season.
Yeah.
So he sent it out, and then we probably see like the whole, I bet Wolf's with him. And maybe we get like an off-screen, like they come together, but we don't see how that happens. Like he comes and around to Rex's side of things, and maybe they get Omega and those kids to them, and then the Bad Batch stays behind. Maybe that's that could be something that could give closure, but I think it would be quick. Yeah. Like the episode would almost have to start off with Rex getting that signal or something. Like it has to start there, like Rex is whatever and says, hey, we got to get to Tantus or something along those lines. I could see that happening. There's still the Zillo Beast, though.
That's what I was going to say. You mentioned Omega. Seems like she has a plan, right? She came across the Zillo Beast.
And that big laser.
I feel like if her plan works, they maybe get out, at least to the base. And so maybe they actually run back into everybody outside the base, right? Like, because the Bad Batch is still
like she gets to them outside.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, so I do know, like the Zillo Beast, it popped up it was in the Clone Wars, and it feeds on electricity. It like gets bigger, and so like maybe it like knocks out the power for all of Mount Tantus, and like
what if it's like a dark episode, like where but it's a pretty jump scares.
I mean, it's a pretty formidable thing. Like it
right.
It doesn't get hurt by blaster fire or lightsabers. Like it's pretty resilient.
That's why they have to use that big laser on it.
Yeah, so I could see her plan working and them getting out some way. Then maybe they meet back up outside the base. Maybe that creates some sort of distraction where Echo's trying to get all the other clones out. I don't know. It will be interesting because obviously there is this plan now with Emery and Echo.
Yeah, because they're going to the vault.
And she makes that comment too of like, if you want to get everybody else out of here, you have to do exactly what I say. So, yeah, I don't know.
And Echo did say we're getting all the clone prisoners out, so it's twofold. There's no way they do this in 25 minutes. I hate to sound negative on this because I have loved this season all the way up to this point. And I still do love it, but like, I want it. You don't want it to end on like a note where it didn't deliver, and because everything up to this point has delivered. So they had very little, quote unquote filler episodes. Even the ones that might be counted as filler really aren't because they move the story forward.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just don't know how they're going to do this.
I did like that interaction between Echo and Emery though, because it kind of harkens back to Wolf and Rex, where it's like you can choose between obeying orders, you can choose between this brotherhood, right? And Echo kind of challenges her with like, you're a clone, like you're one of us, and that sways her. And so I was hoping that would be a big part of this show, was like this conflict between orders and the Brotherhood of the Clones. So I don't know, maybe that comes further down the road because I don't see it happening now. But but I like.
I will say one thing: the way they've like made this like Jurassic Park just almost every other episode. You think the Zillo Beast is going to get Hemlock?
I'd be okay with that.
That'd be pretty cool.
Hemlock needs more on-screen time. I feel like he's a great villain.
He's really good.
He reminds me of almost like a Thrawn character who's just always calm, cool, knows what to do, makes the right decisions. He's really stayed a step ahead of him so far, with the exception of Echo. And so I think he's a great villain. I wish we had more of him on screen. Because I do think he feels threatening, which I feel like this episode was kind of missing, was that sense of like a real threat.
Yeah. Well, look at all of our villains in Empire villains we've had added since, the Disney bought Star Wars. So, what's his name in Rogue One? Krennic, right? Orson Krennic.
Yeah.
So he's a good bad guy, but he doesn't have the full weight of the Emperor behind him. He's still got to answer to Tarkin on things.
Okay? Yeah, and he's very much vying for like
the power. He's trying to get
grace. There. Yeah.
Now you've got Moff Gideon in Mandalorian. I don't care for Moff Gideon. I don't think he's a great bad guy, but he's not like a menacing figure. And it turns out he's just kind of trying to make it. He's on the side of a losing battle, and then you've got Hemlock, and he's like, he has the Emperor's graces, the full support of the Empire, and he's doing like, the cloning and everything. It's interesting stuff. So I almost hope that story continues.
Yeah.
It won't.
No, he'll probably be gone. I wouldn't mind if he continued on, because I think he's a really interesting character, but I do predict that this will probably be the end for him.
Well, here's an issue with if they just wrap this whole little cloning arc up in the next 25 minutes, having not developed on it much after episode 3. We still need some explanation. Like, we know what they need Omega for. We understand that. We understand what they need those other kids for.
Right.
So we know what they're doing. We haven't seen what's inside those chambers that he showed Palpatine yet. We assume we know, but we don't. There's still this big, large time gap where there's no on-screen explanations of episode 9 yet. And I really thought this was going to be where they handled a lot of that. And they have, right? They've hinted at it. We all but know it. I've read stuff, and you can get on the internet and figure anything out. So, like, we understand where it's going. But if they just end it in the next 25 minutes and that's the last thing we get, kind of explaining Palpatine's plans, that's going to be disappointing as well, because they've got a real shot at this through animation and all these other things to make it palatable, to make it good. And I thought this season was going to do that, and it did it for a little bit, and then it just stopped. So I hope they almost don't tie that up here.
Yeah, I mean, because, you said it, Day, when you and I were texting, that it feels like almost inevitable that we're not going to be talking about what's next, right? Like with how it doesn't feel like everything's maybe going to get wrapped up, that we're still going to kind of be looking forward to, well, where are they going to wrap up some of these stories?
Let's talk about all the stories we have to wrap up. Let's just lay it out here. There's quite a few. So Omega, we're confident that her story doesn't wrap up here, right? Like, she's going to go on to something else, I think.
Yeah.
I think we would, that would be a prediction.
Before now, I was so confident she was going to end up with Asajj. But at this point, I don't know how Asajj would end up back in the picture.
Is she on the Cavalry?
And how would she meet up with Rex? Like, I feel like then you got to figure out a way to explain that. Like, I don't know. Maybe she does, but right now it feels like they brought her back to life for like a brief cameo, and I was hoping that she would be a bigger part of the show. So
my thoughts about
I feel like that one's shot.
I think Rex may still be the one that gets Omega out, right? They have the coordinates in and out, like you said. So I almost think like she gets her out or he gets her out and Rex says, you can't be with us because they'll find us or, something along those lines. So you see Rex going where he's going, where we find him in Rebels. And maybe she tells Rex, there's one person I need to go see. And it's
maybe like she can, maybe like a prologue type thing.
Yeah, like she's the one who explains, or when he says, "Where do you go?" and she might say, "Oh, I have an idea," and it ends there or something like that. Yeah. And then the next show picks up like that. That's or true. Something along those lines. I can see that happening and it can work out. So we have to have Omega's story wrapped up.
Yep.
Obviously, the rest of the Bad Batch story has to be wrapped up.
Yep.
I just hate that.
Who's dying at this point?
That's the thing. So if you're going to wrap this story up well, everybody was in agreement. They're all goners.
Yes. And yeah. If you went back and looked at anybody's videos leading into even halfway through the series, even a few episodes ago, everybody's
not our videos, like legitimate people's videos. They were all about people not making it.
And I don't know, maybe I don't know if everybody else does feel this way, because like you said, I haven't had a chance to gauge everybody else's reaction, but it doesn't feel like that's necessarily the foregone conclusion anymore.
Yeah. I have to watch Dark Side Secrets today on like Tony and Will and Mortis FM's channel. Yeah. I'll watch that tomorrow maybe. And then Beyond the Dune Sea will have something Friday. And then I may see what Theory has to say too. Watch some of that stuff. But yeah, I'm not sure about the consensus on that, but it almost seems like it's going to be a little cheap if they just get rid of all of them like really quickly at the end.
Yeah. It doesn't feel
I'm confident that Crosshair's gone. I'd stay with that.
He had that conversation with Rampart where he was like, what happened? You used to think that good soldiers followed orders. It's like, well, it depends on who's giving the orders. And then he says, you were a lone wolf. You only care about yourself like me. And he says, I've changed. Then Rampart's like, have you? So I feel like there's still like, as much as Crosshair's like, no, I'm different now. Like they're still leaving that little comment. Like there's still that little doubt. They're leaving in the show about where Crosshair's at. And so I feel like that's definitely pointing to some big moment for him. I feel like the whole show's been building up to a big moment for him. So
they all could still go out together, like all of them together. And we know that their story's going to wrap up because Star Wars put that little thing out where it was like, they're talking about their armor, where it was saying it was their old armor, like maybe the way they were on their first mission where they had to scrub it. And that's almost like pointing you ahead to the fact that it's what they're going to be wearing on their last mission too. So for sure it's going to wrap that up. So the Bad Batch story has to end. Omega's has to have some kind of finalization. Rex, we got to figure out how all that ends.
Yeah, I don't feel like we're at a place where he's just going to end up going off into isolation now. I mean, that doesn't feel like where Rex is at right now. So
it'd be weird if it was.
Right. There's got to be more on the plate for him before he gets to that point where he's just like, I'm done.
The Tantus thing has to kind of wrap up because we know all cloning at some point goes to Exegol. So there has to be a reason that it leaves.
Do you think Nala Se pops back in the picture next episode? I mean, she's there somewhere in a cell.
Yeah, that's true. So... And then, so the prisoners, that's been a big focus, is what's going to happen with all these prisoners. Now, could the prisoners be the cavalry arriving? Like Emery and Echo getting all them out?
Releasing them?
Yeah, and so maybe that's the cavalry, even though they're all kind of weak and, because they're not being taken care of.
Yeah. Could be something that happens, along with Rex coming in.
I think we almost, kind of like what we said earlier, you have to drop the whole socioeconomic clone ending. Like, what are they going to do with all these clones that they set up in season 2? I don't see how they figure that out.
Which was so fascinating. I was so interested in that aspect of it, and then it doesn't feel like it has time. I feel like this episode...
Is that 4 or 5 things that have to be wrapped up? Just right there.
I mean, it's a lot. I think it's 4. I feel like this next episode, they've got to just start off the bat like full throttle. Like, I don't even know if you just immediately jump into like Omega and the kids scrambling through the ducks. Like that's just how you open up. Because I feel like you've got to start quick with the tension, with the action, because you don't really have time to build it in this if it's one episode and then still have your payoff. Like I feel like you got to get into it pretty quick. And so maybe this whole episode was the tension build up, and then maybe the next one will just be all the actual tension itself. I don't know, but I feel like it's got to get going quick.
Yeah. Well, that's what we were texting earlier. I was like, is this Mando season 3, the finale vibes? Because you went from the next to last episode, you've got Mando is captured, Grogu's captured separately. There's the whole clone or force sensitive clones or whatever that he's got, and then there's the other troopers he's got, and then you've got all the Mandalorians up in the ship, and it's like, wow, there has to be a new Siege of Mandalore, plus Mando has to get Grogu. There's a lot to cover, and so within the first 30 seconds, Mando's like out of captivity, and he finds Grogu, just like that.
Yeah. So, was it the next to last episode where Paz Vizsla is in the ambush next to last. And he gets taken out by the Praetorian guards?
Yep, and that was all just before the end.
That was an awesome scene, and then after that, it was kind of a mess. You're right.
So I think they're going to have to rush it. Unless, here's the thought. So some people have like been commenting like on some stuff I've seen or on one of my videos. It was like, maybe they surprise us and do a 2-episode drop. Now, maybe they surprise us and just give us a 50-minute episode.
Yes.
I don't think they're going to split it. I don't think they're going to split it in two with the title being like Cavalry has arrived. That sounds very final. But what if the information that has been right the whole time about the run times, what if it's wrong and it's actually 50 minutes? Or the very first episode of The Bad Batch was like an hour and 30 minutes. What if the last episode is that way too? That would be fitting.
Such a great setup to the season. I mean, those first 3 episodes together were really, really good, detailed, open to what this story was going to be. And so, man, I would happily welcome like an hour episode, 50-minute episode, whatever.
Well, like the first episode ever of The Bad Batch, where it's like right when orders after episode 3. That's an hour and a half, one episode. So
that's true. So maybe they can bookend it, close it out the way they started it. I hope so. Because again, otherwise, I think to finish this out in a way that feels satisfying and not rushed, you're gonna have to put some things on the back burner, right? Some of these other stories or things that we were hoping for, they're just gonna have to be another day.
Now I'll be happy though.
This just has thrown us all for a loop.
It has. Now I will say though, I will be completely content if they wrap up Omega's story well and give the Bad Batch a meaningful exit. Those are the two big ones right there. I think you've got to get those two, and I think on top of those two, we need something for whatever the next series is going to be, because they're not just going to like not have another series. I want to say the writers have said like we're not through with Asajj, right? Haven't they essentially said that in interviews and stuff?
There were other plans going forward.
So we need something like what's coming.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, that's all I want, right? Like at the end of the day, like this group, the Bad Batch, Omega, like you just want to see their story close out well, right? Like this has been hyped up as this one last mission, one last go at it, and so you just want to feel like there's a finality to these characters that does them justice, because we've been investing in them for 3 seasons now. That it feels like they go out in a way that feels right to the characters
and honors the characters.
And if they can do that, like you said, I'm good, right? Like I'm fine with them leaving other things out if they can land that those elements well. But that's where I think it's just going to have to be a very focused episode. I think they're going to have to really hone in on just our characters for this last episode.
And they did it with Ahsoka. I think some parts were rushed, but they left enough open and closed ends at the end of it. We got the finality with Ahsoka and Sabine there with Anakin kind of looking on them, and that felt good. It gave their tension, that their tension was the whole season, and it gave that aspect closure. At the same time, you've got questions going forward on Shin and Baylan, so that kind of gave you something to look to. And then also you have Ezra getting back to the New Republic, and so you're like, okay, this story's going to continue. And you have Thrawn getting to Dathomir. So what's he going to be doing? And that was a whole lot to get to those points. So I do think
it was.
Now they did it in like 45 minutes though, but I do think they can get it done. I just am cautiously optimistic about it at this point. Very cautiously optimistic. So let's say, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say with Ahsoka, I felt like I remember like just feeling like some of the maybe like episodes 6, 7, just some pacing issues. Like we kind of pulled back from Shin and Baylan, and it was kind of all over the place. And I think that contributed to my feeling like of man, how, like, are they going to wrap this up? But I haven't felt that way with the rest of the season of Bad Batch. I felt like it's been paced really well, and every opportunity, like you mentioned earlier, the one episode you could call a filler still moved the plot along. Like it wasn't completely irrelevant and pointless. And so I didn't have that same feeling of like, the pacing's a little off. Where are we going with this? Like up until this point, I felt like it's been really, really focused in its storytelling. So I'm hoping that it works out. I'm optimistic.
Yeah. I agree. So let's make official predictions. How we think it's going to end. Right. You want to go first? Do you want me to? I know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, go ahead then.
Okay, so I do think it's going to be a short episode. I think the focus will not be on external plot lines as much as maybe we theorized leading into this. So I do think it's going to be heavy on Omega, on the Bad Batch, and I think Echo and what's her name, Imri, just kind of end up thrown in that, right? Like maybe they free all the prisoners while Omega's getting out and while the Bad Batch is trying to get into them. So I think we see all three of those pictures converging at some point. I do think Rampart's going to throw everything at them. So full force of the Empire, they're testing on all kinds of animals. They got a lot of stuff going on there. So I think you're going to see some kind of big battle. It would just be completely out of line if there was not a huge battle of some sorts. I think the Bad Batch cannot make it out in some shape, form, or fashion. They can't not get rid of all of them. They have to have some closure. Otherwise, your next series that you're going to have, even though it's not called the Bad Batch, it's going to have to be about the Bad Batch. So you've got to wrap that up. So I think they all don't make it out. I think Omega does. I think the kids make it out with her. I don't think Imri makes it, any of them, but Omega and the kids get out. I think it is Rex that gets her out because he sent those coordinates.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to figure out what the next series is, like a hinting towards it.
Yeah.
And I know that's so generic, that's so like, real brave picks. But at this point, there's not enough time, I don't think, to do anything else other than them take out Tantus somehow, like win whatever the battle is, get Omega out, and the Bad Batch don't make it out of that victory. It's a, losing the battle but maybe winning the war type thing. Like they don't make it out, but they get Omega out.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of that. I definitely think one of the things, there's still, Tantus is full of those Republic commandos. Well, I'm not really Republic anymore.
They show them every episode
now. I don't know what you call them anymore now that it's not a Republic.
Imperial commandos.
Yeah, there you go. And so, how exactly Echo's planning to get prisoners out with all of those commandos around is a little sketchy.
It'd be like a prison.
I wonder if it doesn't.
They're going to take the commandos out.
They all. Or they all get annihilated, and like maybe they come away with some sort of evidence that's, hey, this is what the Empire's doing to our clone brothers, and maybe that that's what leads Rex to be able to get clones on his side. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how a bunch of clones who have been prisoners are going to fight back against clone commandos. Like, because it's not like there's a big. I guess most of them aren't commandos. A lot of them are those TK troopers or whatever. But I don't know. Seeing how they're going to get out will be interesting. And maybe that's how Echo doesn't make it out. Maybe that's Echo's end. But I can definitely see the Bad Batch in some sort of like trying to get Omega to Rex and staying behind to like hold forces back so that they can escape type of deal. Like a final stand while she's, getting ushered onto a shuttle. Like very, very dramatic, very emotional. That type of scene. Like I can see that unfolding and happening. But I think you're right. I think Omega's ultimately going to end up away with Rex, and where that goes from there, I don't know. But I do think she's going to break out on her own. I don't think she's going to have to wait for the clones to get inside. I think her plan's going to work.
Oh yeah.
And with the Zillo Beast, I think they're going to maybe run into her on that instead of saving her. So,
well, so that's another thing is that they kind of laid the groundwork when Asajj was talking about how like she can, with that animal in that episode, whatever.
I was going to ask you if you think she's going to use the Force on the Zillo
That's what someone commented that too on my reaction videos. Like they've kind of set up a possibility to where Omega kind of uses the Force to use I guess what's the right word, to control the Zillo Beast or something like that.
It's like force empathy or whatever.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing they could do as well.
Yeah, I kind of hope they don't.
Me too.
I like the idea that Omega has gotten as far as she has and won people over really just through her compassion and empathy and like
smarts.
She hates to see things hurt. Yeah, and smarts. But like with Batcher, where's Batcher now?
Yeah, he got left behind. Have we missed that? Like, he stay on that island with those people because he helped Hunter on the island. So.
But like, she won him over by caring for him, right? By like, and so I like that. That's a huge part of her character. And I could see that being one more place where she's able to kind of get her way out by simply just being caring, by simply not being a jerk and actually caring about the people and the things around her. So I don't know. I like that about her character.
I'm going to throw this prediction out here. When Rex gets the transmission, he gets it from Pabu. So he's there trying to figure out what's going on. And he brings Batcher back. I bet Batcher's on the ship with Rex when he shows up.
Yep. That's a good call. That would be good.
That may be the best thing I can
definitely see them doing something like that, for sure. Yeah.
And then if they do anything to that dog, I'll be so mad.
Yeah. No matter what else happens in that show, if they kill Batcher.
Where is Batcher? Is she safe? Is she all right? So I will say...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, our tone and mood of the predictions we made preseason and then mid-season and then now, I would love just to throw those videos side by side and be like, wow, y'all look really defeated going into the finale.
We know nothing.
Just confused,
That's what we've discovered is we don't know anything.
And if we're being honest, don't we want Star Wars to kind of surprise us sometimes?
Yeah, no, I'd have been disappointed if everything from our first prediction show just came true, right? Because as much as we sometimes predict things from things we'd like to see, and it's fun to see those things.
Yeah.
At the same time, you like seeing a story that you don't know where it's going and what's going to happen. So,
and it's a story that hopefully weaves in with more stories.
Yeah,
like big picture.
For sure.
So that's it. That's our predictions. We don't know, but we do think maybe some of the things we said might have to happen. So let us know in the comments your predictions, like all the crazy predictions, as crazy as you can make it for a 25-minute episode that we've got next week. And then on next week's Force with Friends, we'll kind of do the autopsy on the Bad Batch, what we thought about it. So probably looking at the story as a whole, right? Seasons 1 through 3, and hopefully a little bit of conjecture maybe on what's going to happen going forward. So that'll be next week's episode. As always, we appreciate you guys hopping along for the ride with us, and we hope to see you again next week.